a wonderful thing Mother's Day. What a great experience that is. You know, it shouldn't be just one day of the year, of course, you know, but it is a way for us to be reminded of the preciousness of the gift of love, and especially a mother's love, which comes in all shapes and sizes. And since it is Mother's Day, our parish, in honor of Mother's Day, before, remember we used to give out roses or flowers or things like that. As we have begun a tradition of several years now, what we do is we make a contribution to Catholic Relief Services in your name in honor of Mother's Day. And what we've done is allowed for, through our contributions, to have health exams given to 240 children in some of the poorest places in the world. Many children around the world do not have access to quality health care. Routine exams for children help monitor growth and development and provide vaccines to prevent disease. So these children have a better chance of leading healthy and happy lives. And what would be the best gift you could give a mom except a healthy and happy child? So I thank you for that. By the way, it's your money that we're spending on this, so I hope you appreciate how thoughtful this gift is. It reminds us of how blessed we are. And this whole image of God as a mother. In fact, there was an article from Alison Rockhold called Discovering God as Mother, which I'd like to quote liberally from on this Mother's Day. It captures a lot of my thoughts that I've had over the years. But she writes this from the perspective of a person seeking God in prayer and seeking God's strength to love the people that are in her orbit. She says, "My feet shuffle across the floor as I reluctantly lumber toward my prayer chair. A new day has dawned, but I am not motivated to do my morning devotions. I collapse in my seat and look doubtfully at my journal, Bible, and prayer book. And I think, God, I don't want to do any of this today. I just want to curl up here and rest a bit." One time, when we were young, my sister and I and my mom and dad were watching a show on Sunday that was Mutual of Omaha's Animal Kingdom. Remember that? Oh, yeah. You know, and it was like, we always had two people there. One was Jim and the other one was the narrator, who every now and then would give you a little bit of an ad for Mutual of Omaha Insurance. And he would say things like, "Well, Jim is downstream wrestling with the alligator. Let's bring this news to you about policies that may impact your family." The only people as old as me could remember that, but one person did raise their hand here, Mutual of Omaha Animal Kingdom. Anyway, what happened is, was a mother lion, and she's in the savannah, and she's got her pride of cubs are just jumping on her and climbing on her head and bouncing off of her. And I'm looking at this, and all of a sudden I heard my mother say very quietly, "Yep, that's just the way it was." Yep, that's just what it was like. So she says, "God, I don't want to do any of this today. I just want to curl up here and rest a bit." She says, "I tense," as Alison Rockhold, "I tense for the old guilt-laden demand that this is what a good Christian does in the morning. It never comes. Instead, I sense God's arms wrapping around me. I hear a gentle invitation to lay down my weary head. Instead of the guilt that she's feeling, she feels that she anticipates, she feels this sense of the presence of God. She says, in my mind's eye, I imagine God patting my hair like a mother comforts an overwrought child. She says, it is in intimate moments like this that I experience the mothering God. She says, as a child, I would run to my mother with every skinned knee and broken heart. Her acceptance was total, and her presence never failed to soothe me. Now I'm grown, and an ocean separates my home from hers. But still, in moments of sadness and struggle, I long to feel like a child in my mother's arms, completely loved and totally accepted. She says, I rediscover this in the Lord's embrace. She then says, God creates, nurtures, and loves us like a mother loves her child. Scripture tells us that God's love surpasses a mother's love. Because even if a mother could forget her child at her breast, God could never forget us. He then says, and I am so grateful for that truth, that God could never forget me in the moments when I feel lost and alone. God has not forgotten me. God will not abandon me. Even if I fail all the tests of a perfect Christian, the mothering God accepts me as I am. She says, as I rest in the divine lap, I let the maternal images of God in the Bible speak to me. One of my favorite psalms says, I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul. Psalm 131, as a child rests on her mother's knee, so I rest my trust in you, my God. She says, I come to God, my mother, for comfort, not greedily grasping for what God can give me, but for the simple joy of being near my Lord, and I would add, and knowing that I am loved. Now this love that St. John talks about in the first reading, little children, let us love one another because love comes from God. The Greek word agape is not the eros love. It is not an erotic love, but it is a selfless love, a self-sacrificing love, and a love that centers itself on the needs of someone else. And this is the kind of love that John describes, because it is not so much that we have loved God, but that God has loved us. This is the kind of love we're supposed to have for each other. How God has loved us, and this is shown in the love of the Father in sending the Son to save the adopted sons and daughters of the Father. And Jesus did not stint from that. In this gospel, Jesus is leaving these commands to love one another, and these are these are the pre-crucifixion and pre-resurrection encouragement that Jesus is trying to tell them. In the chapter 14, Jesus says, he promises, I will not leave you orphans. In a little while you shall see me, in a little while you shall not see me, but then I shall return. And he talks about sending the Spirit to encourage us and to remind us of everything that he has told us. And so the kind of love that we're supposed to have in the days of stress, as he's trying to prepare the apostles for those chaotic moments when, after celebrating the Last Supper and being at prayer, there is the arrest of Christ, there's the dispersal of the apostles, there's the trial, there's the scourging, there's the crucifixion and death, there's a burial in the tomb, and then people are fleeing Jerusalem. So you have then the appearance of Jesus on the road to Emmaus. You have the appearance of Jesus to Mary Magdalene at the tomb. And this is so that they could remember in the time of chaotic stress and sense of terrible loss that they are loved by a love that is eternal, by a God that is immortal and who conquers death for you and for me by his own life. She says, my intercessory prayers change shape as I talk to my mothering God. Several years ago, I had a friend going through a challenging time. She lingered on my prayer list for months, but I often rushed past her name. I didn't know what to ask of God, so I avoided saying anything at all. Then one day, during a rainstorm, I saw a mother hen spread her wings wide to protect her babies. Immediately, this prayer sprang to my mind. Yes, Lord, wrap your wings around my friend and shelter her from this storm. She says, I found the reference in Psalm 91. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. And there's that wonderful refrain to that psalm. My refuge, my stronghold, my God, in whom I trust. At some of the saddest times in our lives, that psalm speaks to us when we hear, I will raise you up on eagle's wings. So, she says, I wrote my friend's name next to the verse. And from then on, when I was at a loss for how to pray for her, I remembered the tender care of that mother hen and trusted that God would shelter and care for my friend in the same way. There is in the Bible, and she mentions this, but it's always been one of my favorite images. It's Jesus on the heights above Jerusalem as he's anticipating his coming death. And he says, he's weeping, and he says, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I long to gather you to me, like a mother hen gathers her chicks beneath her wings, but you would not let me." It's that kind of inclusive, embracing, sheltering, protecting love in which God then shows himself to be not only Father, but Mother to us. She says, I write, this mothering type of love, the selfless, agape, self-sacrificing, is not limited to those who have borne children. When I was newly ordained, I was sent to St. Philip and James on Charles Street, right across from Seton High School. And we still had the St. Philip and James Catholic School there, just down the corner, around from North Charles General Hospital, which still had the wards in those days, separated by curtains. And some of the oldest nuns in the world, I think, were the Sisters of St. Joseph, as a matter of fact. And today we still know that they are some of those longest lived women in the world is the sisters. And it might be because they live in community, because they're devoted to God, and maybe because they have no children. It could be, and they have no husband. So maybe that part of the secret's to a longer life and that it's less stress. But we really don't know exactly what. But I do remember one of the oldest sisters there. And what happened was this. I would go and say Mass in the morning at 6 o'clock. And they had just probably already come from their own morning prayer, and then we're attending Mass. And as I was finishing Mass, I noticed that they were preparing another plate in the kitchen, a little table, because they had already eaten. And I said, "Who's this for?" There was a little girl who, for some reason, did not have the support that she needed as a child at her home. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know if the mom was unavailable or incapable. But she would get herself up to go to school. And when she would arrive at the school, the sisters would notice that she was wearing the same clothes each day and that she was in need of cleaner clothes. Also that she could use a little scrubbing. And she was hungry. And so what the sisters did is they asked in the parish, "I need a couple clothes this size." And then when the little girl came in, they would give her some clothes to, change into, take the clothes that she had worn into school, washed them and everything, and then given them to her another day, and sat down at the table, and gave her breakfast. Imagine they also made sure she had lunch. And that kind of self-sacrificing love, that kind of mothering love, came from a woman whose womb never bore a child, but who, having devoted her life to trying to find in prayer and in a closeness to Christ, her spouse, she then found this kind of love within her, which she was able to give as freely as a mother gives to their own child. I've never forgotten that. It shows that in this Gospel of St. John, which reminds us that God will not leave us as orphans, that there are all types of families, and the love of God can be found in all of them, especially the most needful of it. And if there is a place where there is not love, then we as people who are commanded by God to love can then put love, and then people who would have been loveless will have found it and will be sustained. So this Mother's Day, there's all types of mothers. May God bless you with his love.